And as we do, we're following the latest around Iran as the country unveiled what it claims is its first underground fortified Air Force base yesterday, with the head of the Islamic Republic's military saying the site would be among those used to launch a response to any potential strikes by Israel or others. In other words, it's a direct deterrent to any assault on its growing nuclear infrastructure. At least it's meant that way. Now, last year, Iran's army unveiled the existence of an underground base in a mountain range where it said hundreds of military drones were stored. Here's more from yesterday's announcement.
Our enemies, who usually have wrong intelligence, should sometimes see what we are capable of. This will help maintain peace in the world and the region.
If a country or a place from surrounding countries or anywhere in the world is being used as a base to attack Iran, other than the Zionist regime, which we are already prepared for, that base will come under our heavy attack.
Now, for more on the subject around Iran, so much to discuss, we're joined by Avi Melamed, founder and CEO of Inside Middle East Intelligence Perspectives, and a Middle East expert. Always good to have you on the program, Avi. Now, look, Iran has shown off similar tunnels in the past, or at least, the indication that they're moving things underground, the storage areas for missiles and drones. Look, like in other fronts for Israel, it appears clear at this point that anything strategically sensitive or important is deeply fortified underground. Where does that leave the entire standoff with Iran? Does it change things?
Well, thank you for having me. Look, I'm not so impressed with this story of this underground, aerial whatever base. The Iranians from time to time are using they're doing those parades, they're showing it to the media. Obviously, it's part of the Iranian tactic. As a side note, I would say, to the best of my knowledge at least, and I'm not a military expert, but to the best of my knowledge, Iran Air Force is not the strongest arm that the Iranians have in their possession.
I think we can see that even from some of these images. I mean, these are retrofitted, F-4 Phantoms they're showing off, and these, these are jets that were in the Israeli Air Force decades ago. So, yeah, we don't know the power or strength or hitting power of the Iranian Air Force. But nonetheless, this is in line with the nature of the threats, again, that I touch on Israel's facing on all fronts, whether it's Gaza, southern Lebanon, maybe Syria, that the IDF, is encountering these deeply entrenched, dug underground, enemies. On the other side of that, has the IDF been advancing its capabilities? Are we likely to see the conflict, though, increasingly utilizing non-conventional methods? Where do you think this is all going, Avi?
Look, I think that the most significant aspect is to understand the following real nature of the Iranian threat. The Iranian threat has a couple of major segments. One of them, of course, is the whole story of the Iranian nuclear military capacities, or the attempts of the Iranians to acquire such capacity. The other thing is the story of the missiles, the long range, the short range, the accurate missiles that the Iranians have, and they have been significantly developing that. This is a major challenge. Another challenge is the drone challenge. We saw that happening in our immediate neighborhood, and we saw that happening in Ukraine. And finally, we have to remember one other thing. The Iranians are operating a huge armies of terror groups, power that is scattered around the Middle East. You got the Hezbollah in Lebanon, also present in Syria. You got any Shiite Afghan militias backed by the Iranians, Pakistani Shiite militias backed by the Iranians, Iraqi Shiite militias backed by the Iranians. You got in Gaza Strip Hamas and Islamic Jihad that are also acting as a sort of like subcontractor for the Iranians. These are the serious challenges that the Iranians are presenting to this region. That challenge has been more than once materialized on the ground. Reminding you, Israel was attacked directly by Iranian drone. The Saudis, the United Arab Emirates, and others have been directly attacked by the Iranian drones and missiles. So I think that in the end of the day, policymakers, and particularly in the West, should absorb and internalize the significant threat of this multi-layer military structure that the Mullah regime was able, unfortunately, to create across the region in the last couple of decades. This is a very significant threat. We already saw how serious that threat is.
Look, for the West, for Israel, how much does it complicate the story right now, efforts to counter Iran, that they're entrenching with Russia right now, that there's even reports that they may be starting to build their drones inside Russia to some degree? Does this deepening alliance on that side of the equation, does that severely complicate efforts?
Yes, I mean, look, the Iranian-Russian alliance is something that is currently temporary. We have to also to remember there is a lot of competition, not to say conflict of interest between those two players. But when it comes to the West, I think that the major issue is Western determination to make it very clear to the mullah regime that in the end of the day, there is enough power, and I'm saying power in the whole meaning of this term, in the possession of the West and its allies, to actually cause this mullah regime to pay a very, very, very severe, serious price, to the point it may jeopardize the endurance of that mullah regime. And up until now, in my perspective, and the way I look at the mullah regime and the way they look at the situation, I don't think that the West was powerfully enough convincing the Iranians that they mean business. And
that's a good point.
And the outcome of that is that we saw as a fact on the ground that the mullah regime was expanding its aggression in the region, was expanding its capacities in the region. This is something that I have been warning for at least the last decade. Yeah. It is unfortunate that that warning was not fully, totally observed by the circles that they should be observed by.
Certainly, if they're watching you on our show these last 10 years, certainly, Avi, I know this has been a theme we've been, watching closely here. But, in your estimation, and I want to break it down as plainly as possible, do you see any scenario where Israel will let Iran develop nuclear weapons?
Honestly, I cannot refer to that directly the way you may expect. I think that based upon the statements that are made by Israeli senior leaders, and I'm talking about both the military as well as the political ones, Israel is determined not to allow Iran to have a nuclear military capacity. The major threat here is the following one. Once Iran will have that umbrella, this is a new, not region, this is a new world. And one of the major concerns of Israel, and not only Israel, is that in such scenario, Israel will become much more vulnerable to the mercies, sort of speaking, quote unquote, of the Iranian proxies that are scattered around Israel's neck, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Islamic Jihad and Hamas. The meaning of that is that we will witness more instability in the region, more violence in the region. And one last thing that we have all to bear in mind. The moment the Iranians are going to have a nuclear weapon, you are looking at a situation where the Saudis will have a nuclear weapon.
The proliferation.
And probably they will not be the only one.
Avi Matlin, thanks for being with us as always.